The details are passed. Reaction now. We've got Rand Paul with us. Senator, you've been looking at this very, very closely. You were saying that neither this plan nor the Reid plan, because the cuts weren't big enough or even substantive enough, would be passable in your eyes, right?
Well, the interesting thing about this vote is it's not as popular as cut, cap, and balance, which we passed about a week ago. We had 234 votes, including Democrats and
but
most
not
of the
in the Senate. The
Republicans.
Senate could never get the opportunity.
Yeah, but this
right?
isn't the Senate either. So
Right.
I mean,
will that ever be given a shot in the Senate as part of this kumbaya kind of feeling? Go ahead and try it.
Here's what I don't understand. They said cut, cap, and balance, which we passed 2 weeks ago, was dead on arrival. They're saying this one's dead on arrival. Why are we passing a second piece of legislation that's dead on arrival?
Why?
I don't know. We modified our first position before we had a chance to find out what their position was. The only thing we know in the Senate is that the president's budget was introduced, all the Republicans voted against it, and all the Democrats voted against it.
So
what
going?
are they for?
You know, you're right here, but I'm telling my Reid senator, I know you're a freshman senator, I can't fathom how you guys operate.
Yeah, I don't know either. It is the one thing the president got right the other night is it's dysfunctional. But what he gets wrong is we're not doing the people's business because we're not listening. The people,
what do you think the people are saying?
75% of the people say that we should balance our budget. And he wants a balanced approach, but he sure doesn't want a balanced budget.
But he's turning it around by saying if it means shutting down the government or risk a default, they don't want that. What do you say?
Neither do we. I don't want default. I don't want the government to shut down, but I want the other side to behave responsibility. They haven't passed a budget in 2 years. They don't pass appropriations bills. They aren't doing their job. They're not even showing up for work and doing their job up here.
Is it going to be tough to go back to Kentucky, though, Senator, in the event, let's say, the deadline isn't met, and Tuesday we're looking at least a partial government shutdown? Obviously, $172 billion a month in tax revenue still comes in. You could still pay some things. Obviously, bondholders, Social Security, Medicare recipients would be among the premier names, I guess. But how's that going to go down?
Well, one, I think they will raise the debt ceiling before then. But if they didn't, I think the president really ought to be ashamed over the last couple of months for scaring people. I mean, scaring senior citizens and telling them they might not get their check, that's just irresponsible. We, in fact, have legislation that directs him and tells him by law he has to pay the senior citizens.
Don't you think he knows that? And by the way, we're looking at what appears to getting to be close to a final vote here in the House for the Boehner measure that calls, it's a sort of a two-step dance. I think that's the way you explain it, Senator. But it's going nowhere fast. It does cut spending, but not nearly enough to your liking. Right?
Well, but it cuts the rate of increase in spending.
Good
it doesn't
point.
cut
Very
spending.
Good point. Very good point.
It's going to add $7 to $8 trillion of debt over the next 10 years. Doesn't slow spending. A freeze in spending would actually cut some spending, or a 1% cut. This is an increase in debt and an increase in spending every year, and it's not going to help the country.
Is it your feeling that there is, I always suspect something's going on behind the scenes that I don't know about, and that a secret deal...
I have the same suspicion. I have the
and that a secret deal is being done and
I
made.
have the same suspicion.
What do you think?
Yeah. No, I think they are working on some kind of agreement, and they say, many people say there was an agreement hatched out on Sunday, and the president sort of...
And this is all theater.
And the president petulantly walked away, but they already have a deal. I think there's no chance the debt ceiling doesn't go up, and I think the marketplace knows that.
Does it go up on Tuesday?
I think it does. It goes up before then. But the interesting thing is everybody's saying, oh, well, the marketplace went down 500 points in the last week. Well, yeah, we're growing at 1%. Do you think that was good news that the economy's not growing? Yeah, it's all about the economy. I don't think Dow Jones is at all reacting to this. They're assuming that the debt ceiling will be raised.
Okay, a fellow next to us kind of listening. What's he saying? I don't believe a word he's saying. That fellow should be familiar. He's your dad, Ron Paul, the fine Texas Congressman, presidential candidate, joining us right now. The father-son team. I'm honored to have both of you here with us.
Thank you.
Congressman, the senator, your son was saying pretty much I know what I've heard you say, and that is this is probably going nowhere fast. But bottom line, both of these measures that are being contemplated, the Harry Reid measure, this measure, don't cut spending enough, don't get serious enough, and therein lies the problem. What do you say?
Yeah, matter of fact, it doesn't really cut anything. I've just seen another report out that actually spending next year is going up $1 trillion. So that made me suggest maybe we ought to just freeze the budget. That would be a good way to shrink the budget too. So no, this doesn't touch the problem. And My argument has been that it's not a budgetary problem per se, it's a government philosophy problem. As long as we think that we can run this entitlement system as we have, and as long as we think we can police the world, this budget doesn't mean anything.
But this barely touches entitlement itself. And Republicans, or Democrats I should say, were complaining more that it was actually onerous, and Nancy Pelosi saying they could compromise life on this planet, as we know. So that vitriol notwithstanding, I mean, if just little minor adjustments in the growth of the entitlements incite this kind of wrath, are we ever going to make progress?
It's reason to be pessimistic. I tend to use a word for people who talk that way, and I think it's demagoguery. Because
so you think Nancy Pelosi's demagogue?
I think it's on both sides extremely, because it's power in politics, and it's partisanship that I don't enjoy at all, because I want to deal with the philosophy of government, what the role of government ought to be, and what the role of money should be. You know, that's where the real issue is, and it's not tinkering with the budget. I mean, we should do everything we can and emphasize this cutting, but just like you say, you cut a little. Just think of how Paul Ryan got beat up. I didn't support it, but it wasn't enough. But he got beat up. As the
senator pointed out, we're actually talking about the growth, curbing the growth of the spending, not cutting spending. But does it concern either of you right now that whatever deal we do get, obviously the key to success, to get passage or get both sides on board, don't touch those entitlements. Don't look at revenue increases right now, which I guess the two of you might like, but almost make it vanilla.
Well, that's what they're doing, but what they don't realize, and they don't admit, is the country's bankrupt. There will be a default. It won't be the kind that they're pretending they're worried about.
So you think the default is happening?
The default is current because people are getting less for their money, and that's how big governments and big countries default.
The technical default is not making good on a payment. You think that's inevitable?
Oh, well, yeah, and it's morally the same thing, and economically it can be much more damaging.
No doubt, no doubt. But do you think that by the way, this has officially passed to the House. I think I intimated as much, but it has officially passed to the House. But do you think then that the credit agencies downgrade regardless then? Whatever happens?
I think they're irrelevant.
Yeah.
You know, yes, it might be for a day or two, but they didn't warn us about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Well, that's a good point. They didn't, did they?
I think the markets are more powerful than the rating agencies. And matter of fact, the bonds has been doing pretty good. So now.
You know, I don't want to get too arcane. Senator, you might have a thought on this. Why is it Treasury markets have been relatively stable? You know, the yield is lower today on 2, 5, 10, and 30-year notes and bonds than it was yesterday.
I think they've discounted what's going to happen. But the other thing is that we had a banker in recently this week who said all of the institutions that hold Treasury bills are going to change the rules. They can hold AAA or government bonds.
So you got some wiggle room.
So what they're saying is when government bonds are junk, you'll still be able to hold them.
So, yeah, that's a big bugaboo, right? Because right now, technically, you could not.
Yeah, that's what they're worried about. So they're changing the rules, but I love the way they're putting it, AAA or government bonds.
Congressman, the presidential candidates, you notwithstanding, haven't made too big a deal of this drama, saying, oh, we got to get our books in order, yada, yada. You've actually put pen to paper with ideas and all that. And it's actually advanced your popularity a little bit. I mean, in one-on-one matches with the president, you don't do too badly. Actually, you're darn near even. So in a sense, were you just early on this and people are waking up to it? Or will this scare people into thinking, we don't want to do anything draconian, so what Ron Paul is advocating and his son are advocating, we don't want to hear?
The longer it lasts, the more supporters we get.
Is that how it goes?
Oh, yes. The more crisis is. The real boost in the support came with the collapse in 2008 because I talked about it, 10 or 15 years, about what was coming. And therefore, the growth is coming. And this is just the beginning because...
When you say it's the beginning, I've always heard that. What do you mean? Play that out.
Because all this debt has to be liquidated for us to get growth again. And they don't want to liquidate debt by, like you or I might have to declare bankruptcy. know, we don't do that with a country. You liquidate debt by paying it off with junk money. You just print the money, and that is liquidation.
Something, for example, Greece can't do.
Yeah, right. And you have runaway inflation, and that's a price increase, and that's a tax on people. It literally is an indirect tax, and that's what's coming. It's already presently here. I think by next summer, the big talk will be price inflation, and it's already big talk already by a lot of households.
So at the Republican convention, when you're being nominated as the Republican candidate for president, that will be the theme?
We'll be in tough times then, and people will be much more attuned to the monetary system, because monetary reform has to come for the resolution of this crisis that we're facing.
Okay, you agree with that?
Well, I think monetary policy and debt go hand in hand. You need to monetize your debt because you can't get enough people to borrow it. So really the inflation comes as a consequence of debt. They're all interrelated. Debt, monetization, inflation, prices, it's all coming though.
If he becomes a Republican nominee for president, would you vote for him?
Well, I want to come home for Thanksgiving, obviously.
Are you guys sharing? Do you have like an apartment or house you share?
We did for a while, but then we had some disagreements and we had to break up.
Well, one's neat, one's clean.
He wouldn't pay his rent in silver.
Gentlemen, thank you both very, very much. Great seeing you. One of the more powerful families in this country right now, although they don't like to admit that, Ron and Rand Paul. All right, to Rich Edson right now.